Just as long as you know where to print it. Okay, any question here? All right, so let's move on. The next part we're going to talk about is input and output. Well, we already have talked about one of the output, which is printf. Now we're going to add two more things. One is called get char, get character, and the other is put char, which is put output the character. Like those are all single character at one time. All right, so from the keyboard. Okay, get the key character from keyboard. So how can we use this? All right, how that will be helpful to us. So let's imagine we are writing a program that will output whatever word or sentence you have entered into the program. All right, so this way, well, in this case, it's more useful for us to use the while loop because the function can only output one character at one time, and we don't know how long our input will be, right? So it's a good idea. We check for, this is EOF is end of line, right? We check for the end. Before we reach the end, we just output every single character we have received. So that's the idea. Here we use a condition, as I just explained. The extra mark equal means not equal, right? Not equal to end of file, all right? So end of file could means different numbers in different system, but by using this constant value, you don't worry about what's the system you're using. You use it, you will always work. And the other thing is we should have a secondary bracket, all right, around this function calling, right? So basically, we're getting a character and we're assigning it to the variable c, right? So I'm gonna tell me if we don't have this bracket, what will happen? This particular bracket, this one and the one in the front. Yeah, otherwise we will run this comparison first. All right, so in C, obviously, like Java, it has a sequence of different operations. The comparison operation always go first before it being assigned to another value. So if we, without this bracket here, we will compare the input number to the end of the line first. That will give us either true or false, right? Then we assign this value to the variable c. So that gives us only 0 or 1, right? Which is not right in our case. So this is tell us it's quite important to, well, it is always a good idea to add a bracket, I would say. Even you're expert, you knowing what's this order, you code it perfectly, but just for readability reason, you should always add this brackets. Yeah, and then again, once we have read this value, if it's not the end of the file, we will output it. All right, so that again, this code is quite straightforward. Yeah, so typically the end of file is represented by -1, but again, it could be different by the machine we're talking it's running on. All right, so we already have a program that could output the character, then we can naturally adapt it to count the character, right? That makes the program more useful. Like I have just input something and output the exact same thing back to me, then it really seems very useful. But rather, if we are looking for a counting program, right? I have a file for whatever length I don't know, and I just put into the code, and they give me the number of character in the code. That's quite useful, I would say. All right, so here you can see the change is very, very minimum, well, actually there are a few changes. First of all, you can see there's a new type of variable we haven't talked about, which is called long, right? So long is an integer type, which is longer than the typical integer. Yeah, because we're counting maybe a file, maybe a little bit longer, so we use a different type. In old days, yeah, you have to be very careful about choosing the variables type. You want to choose the smaller one to save your memory, but also you don't want to blow your number, right, if it's too big. So sometimes based off your experience. The while loop itself are very similar, but this time, because we don't have to output it, we don't need to assign it to a variable anymore. We simply just compare it to the end of the line, right? As long as it's not the end of the file, we will continue this loop, right? Inside this loop, we have plus and C, right? So there are two forms. One is plus and a variable. The other is a variable plus. We will talk about the difference between them a little bit later, but for now, we just go with this one. Okay, plus a number, which means you will add a value, add 1 to this value, NC. So every time you run it, the number will increment by 1. So we use this as a counter, right? And then once we get out of this loop, we have the exact number of characters in this variable. And now we're going to just print it out, right? So LD is for printing long integer in our case. All right. So let's make it even more complicated now. All right. So last time we count for every character. This time, let's count for any blanks, any tabs, and any new line.